I don't think she moves on. I mean, we've got so many examples of her looking back and complaining and moaning. And if she had moved on, then she would want to come to the coronation because she would have forgiven, or in her words, maybe accepted how the royal family is. And she'd start again, draw a line, and come. But she's absolutely determined not to do that. That's why she's not coming. She's got a lot of resentment there. So her type of moving on is, I don't think, many people's.
Hello and welcome to Reasoned UK with me, Darren Grimes. If you enjoy today's content, please do consider hitting that subscribe button and the little notification bell that resides next to it so you don't miss out on any future content. You can also click the link in the description if you're in a position to support us. Every little really does help with our independent journalism. Well, folks, we're now but a week away, really, from His Majesty King Charles III's coronation. The first coronation we've had, of course, for generations after being blessed by our late Queen's long life and life of service. Are you excited for it? Because there's now a slew of side stories leading up to it. Some around slavery, pushed by, in my view, miserable leftists at The Guardian. There are polls of young people saying, scrap the monarchy. There is pressure from groups like Republic, organising its biggest ever demonstration against the coronation. As if we've not got enough to get us down at the minute in British life. And of course, a side helping of Meghan and Harry running about in the background saying, me, 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 me. But folks, I can think of no one better than today's guest to help me dissect all of these stories. Today I'm joined by the royal expert, royal commentator, and royal author, Angela Levin. Angela joins me now to guide us through. Hi, Angela. Thank you very much for your time.
Hello. Fine, it's a pleasure.
Angela, today, as I said at the start there, The Guardian are running a load of stories recently on how His Majesty the King is a descendant of this Edward Porteous chap who bought apparently 200 slaves to work on his plantations in Virginia in the 1600s. Now, I don't know about you, Angela, but I find it frankly ridiculous that they're seeking to damage the royal family over events that took place hundreds of years ago. I mean, do you think, Angela, that it was a mistake, in your view, for the King to agree to support research into the monarchy's ties to historic slave trades? That, let's not forget, Britain spent much of its GDP on ultimately abolishing.
Yes. I mean, I think that King Charles has a strategy that he is not going to be pushed into answering these things. Of course, he cares very much about what happened in the early times. It's early sort of 17th century, isn't it? He can't possibly be accepted. He can't possibly be expected to be in charge of that. I mean, it's absolute nonsense. And I think that all this desperation is just there to try and stop the monarchy and not to make it an enjoyable country full event and to have a republic life instead. I think it's absolutely nonsense. And the fact that they are hanging on to this slavery thing in 1960, no, in 1600 and something is absurd. But
It
I think
is.
they've got more and more for destroying the monarchy without actually having any thoughts for who they could replace it with. I think the monarchy does very well, with the exception of very few.
Absolutely. I mean, I can't imagine anything worse, Angela, than, say, President Blair or President John Major, whoever else, waving from the balcony of Buckingham Palace. You know, it brings me
Yes.
out in hives, shivers. But,
But
Angela,
they would also have a belief in the politics, so that they would go very right wing, and actually the royal family is neutral. So that's very important. We don't want them trying to sell a political line when they have no right to do that.
yes, it's apolitical, and that's a good part of the institution. Of course, it's a part of
Yeah,
the reason why the institution survived for so long, isn't it, Angela?
yeah, absolutely,
But I mean,
absolutely.
do you think this is all? It smacks to me, Angela, of desperation because I mean you've been
Yeah.
following royal stories and the royal family for many years now. I don't wish to be impertinent by saying that, but I'm wondering, do you think this is because of the Queen's popularity, our late Queen's popularity? Is this a sort of a moment where they're thinking the Republican side of the argument, which is, let's be honest, in a minority in this country, are they thinking now's our chance? The Queen was too popular, Charles is less so. This is our chance to really try and strike home.
Yeah, I'm sure you're right. And it's obvious that if you've had someone in charge, whether it's a country or a company or in a family, and they've survived and been the leader for 70 years, you're going to miss them hugely. And the next person who comes is not going to fill those shoes. It's impossible. It doesn't mean they're not going to be great in their own way. And my belief is that once the ceremony is over, that Prince Charles, King Charles, will say lots of things that he wants to do and modernise it. I think he's a very dignified man who hasn't actually tried to hit back. He's kept his mother's saying, don't explain and don't complain. And I think he's absolutely right. And I think all this gang up to try and make it, to destroy it and say, this is my moment. I think it's now very much backfiring, just the same as Harry and Meghan, that people can see here is a man who is obsessed with the country and the Commonwealth. He's working himself non-stop. We've seen all the places that he's gone round in the
Yeah.
United Kingdom since his mother died, and he's been received with enormous welcoming, and people have been cheering. There have just been these few people who say, not my king, not my king. You know, they sound a bit like they're sort of puppets. And I think that he's proven when they went to Germany, of all places, and they were waving the United, you know, the flag, and actually cheering him on. So he has a charm that people don't see until they're close to him and understand him. I mean, he's the one who thought about climate change long before anybody else, and plastic. He's very keen on keeping the world clean and help people get a job, young people. And I think that it's just being thoroughly nasty. And it's just certain words that spin things, isn't it? Like racism, when you can't really prove it and you're not going to
Yeah.
say who's done it. And then this slavery is a new word that's very useful to hit him with. But, you know, Queen Victoria's husband apologised profusely in 1840, and that's it. We've made an apology. It's not our fault. It's not our grandfather, our great grandfather, our great grandfather. It's a way of gathering money and also throwing paint on
Yes.
his all over him. And I think we just don't take any notice. I think that's appalling behaviour.
Yeah.
There's no good manners there whatsoever. There's no respect there whatsoever. And who wants someone like that controlling the country?
Yes, I mean, I was struck by this polling that The Guardian are also pushing, actually, Angela, that says that a third of Generation Z, the next generation that'll come to adult age,
Yeah,
basically
yeah,
saying that they want the monarchy to be abolished. I mean, 32% of them polled likely to be supportive of the royal family. That's it. Now,
yeah.
I don't think that suggests that there's a problem brewing, Angela, because when you actually say to these people, and I'm speaking anecdotally right now, but when you say to young people, well, what would you have there instead? They're completely flummoxed, Angela.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. There's no point saying you're going to destroy a royal family and what are you going to replace it with? They've got no idea. They don't, you know, there's nobody they want unless it's from their own gang, as it were, to take over. Well, they're not going to take over. They're not going to give up their lives. We've seen actually through Meghan how hard she found it, and that it's not an easy thing to do, although it looks glamorous and that they're not really working. it's very demanding, and you have to decide that it is not about you. This is about the country and the Commonwealth, and you have to go that way. Well, I don't think there's many people who would want to. Lots of people say, my goodness, thank goodness, I wouldn't like to be in the royal family even if they paid me. Well, they don't have to. And I think as well that young people often don't want the monarchy just as much as they don't want certain parties in politics. But as they grow older, they appreciate it. They see what's going on. It's the same with parents. Children don't think that their parents are very good when they're teenagers. They think they're awful and old-fashioned and boring and know nothing. And there's the joke that some child said that as a teenager, and then they came back when they were 21 and said, it's absolutely amazing how much my parents have learnt in this time. And it's just an attitude. And I think that older people understand what they're giving and how much difference they make. It stabilizes this country. It brings in tourists. It helps the needy. And it's all, they're there for any sort of help that they can give. They calm the country. Think of the COVID time when Queen Elizabeth spoke about that to us. It was calming and very good. And King Charles, just after his mother died, he spoke about what he was going to do in a general way and his gratitude to everybody. And that calms people down. The people felt much more reassured by him after that speech. So I think that we mustn't take any notice. We mustn't give them time, and we mustn't take any notice because they've just got it wrong. And
Yeah.
when they grow up, they'll understand.
Well, I hope so, because I mean, watching the anti-monarchy group Republic, who are planning, they say, they purport at least, to be planning their largest demonstration in history. And I mean, Angela, my view on this is really quite simple. It's sod off, frankly, right? Because if these people can win an election on a manifesto that says, yeah, we'll scrap the monarchy, absolutely fine, I'm a Democrat, I would accept that. But until then, how about they just leave us alone, Angela, and let us celebrate the continuity of the crown during a time of great hardship for many people throughout the country?
Yes, I completely agree with you. I actually had a bit of a row with someone who was interviewing me on TV slot, and I said I think they should stop the people who don't want the monarchy from actually coming. I don't think they should stand in front shouting, not my king, not my king, not my king. If they want to do that, they can go away. I don't want them to spoil what will be so many millions of people's
Yes.
of great enjoyment. And I was told, my goodness, don't you give people a chance to speak? Everyone has a voice. How terrible, how terrible. I said, well, you're not letting me speak because the person kept interrupting what I was trying to say. But actually, I said they can say what they like for 354 days of the year. But on this particular occasion, they have to just shut up.
Yeah, I mean, Angela, if you briefly had to set out why it is that you remain so passionate about the monarchy, despite the loss of the Queen, because one thing that you will have heard before, Angela, is, oh, well, will the monarchy go on after Her Majesty?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
why
Well, I
is it
think
that
that's,
you are
sorry.
so passionate about it? What drives you to, do this day in, day out?
Well, actually, I've always liked the monarchy as a small child. My wish was always to go and have tea in Buckingham Palace, even as a little girl. But I haven't been obsessed by it at all. But what does make me very determined is the negativity about the people. I don't think they understand what they're doing and how they're doing it and what they've given up for the nation. And I think that I need to speak out in my own way just to get a bit of balance. And I have had the great honour of spending a lot of time with King Charles, a lot of time with Queen Camilla, and other members of the royal family. Of course, I wrote a biography of
Yeah.
Prince Harry, and I have done of Queen Camilla. And I liked Harry then. I mean, he was terrific, and I wrote in great positive way about him, but he's completely changed. So I've changed my view of him as well. I think he's a rogue now and terrible. But I just respond to what's going on. If there was a king or queen who I thought was dreadful, I would no longer support it. But I read a lot about them and I see them, and I just feel that one has to stand up and recognise all that they're doing for us.
I mean, when was it? What was the turning point for you with Prince Harry then? Because a lot of people say, look, Angela, Prince Harry served in the armed forces. You know, he gave service to this country in the same way that other members of the royal family have given service. So, what was the turning point for you?
Well, I liked him enormously, and I was one of the few presenters for CNN when they got
Yeah,
married. And it was the most fantastic day. I loved it. I was a bit wary about Meghan because I was there when she went on the first walkabout with him. And I was a bit concerned that she sort of pushed him out of the way, and she wasn't even engaged then. I thought, oh dear, perhaps she's very nervous. But I think since then, when he's been so ungrateful and so cruel to his family, I've found that he's a nightmare, really.
yeah. Well, I couldn't agree more. Angela, Princess Anne, the Princess Royal, she's
Yes.
going to apparently play a key role in the coronation, featuring in the procession behind King Charles's carriage as the gold stick in waiting. I mean, is this because the Princess Royal is Charles's most favoured sibling?
Well, I think that it's an honour to give her this, but she's so reliable, she's so strong minded. She does things without making a fuss. She does so many engagements. She does, I think, more than anyone other than King Charles. And she just does it quietly. She doesn't want the press there. She doesn't need all the attention. But if you remember that some years ago she was in a cab or being driven from the palace, and someone came up with a gun and threatened her and said she had to come out the cab because he wanted to take her away and ask for a huge amount of money back. And she just refused. She just said, get lost. I'm not doing this. And he stood up to him in the most fantastic way, strength. You're not going to get this woman down. And I think she's got that strong sense of duty. And I think Charles would want to thank her because she's been so wonderful with the Queen in her last days and works very hard and feels devoted to the family. And she said that how honoured she feels. And I think that's right. And also, it shows that the family is netted together. They're helping each other. We've got a few people who are not involved in that, but on the whole, she will do that with great delight and no begrudging him, because there was a time when they didn't get on so well, when Camilla first came into this
Right.
screen, and the fact that he's thanking her by giving her this incredibly important role, I think is lovely. And if you think about it, you see, Prince Charles has got his sister to look after him when they get older, and she's very efficient. She told him how to bow after the Queen's funeral. And you've got William, of course, hasn't got anybody now. He doesn't have that extra help. So you've got King Charles with his sister, George with his sister, and William without his brother. And Harry said to me that he and William were incredibly close. They'd never got closer. This was 2017, 2018. And that, he adored him and do anything for him, and he wanted to help him when he became king. And now he's just done his best to crush him.
Horrible, 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 horrible. I mean, speaking of Harry, Angela, in Los Angeles recently, they attended a basketball game, and there was a bit of an awkward moment, Angela, as you well know, from their
Yes.
their private box. Get them, and they were caught, Angela, on the arena's infamous kiss cam. That's where, they zoom in on a couple, or what they think is a couple, and sort of wait for them to give each other a peck on the cheek or a peck on the lips. Now, Harry appeared to very quickly, clock on as what was going on and leant over to kiss Meghan. Now, Meghan, Angela, brushed him off, and she was
Yes.
laughing and she grabbed his arm instead. Now, Angela, some have been comparing this to Diana brushing off Charles in a similar fashion. Now, we know how
Well,
unhappy that relationship was. Is there trouble in Montecito?
Well, I don't know if there's trouble, but I can't bear the thought of even saying that she's in any way whatsoever
Like
like Diana,
Diana? Yeah.
whatever has happened. But she obviously didn't want him to kiss her, and she did it with a sense of there was a brutality in the way she did it. Um, I think that he's still very useful to her. Without him, I think she would not get all the attention that she has sought and now has. But I don't really know what's going on. I thought that the marriage wouldn't last more than a couple of years, but it's still going on now.
Yeah, but I mean,
And
if you
we
view that
have to see.
scene there, that's on screen right now, I mean, she looks cold as ice.
Well, I think she is cold as ice, isn't she? I think a lot of her laughter and behaviour is there because she's an actress.
Yeah, well, not a very good one, if I dare say, Angela. But now, speaking of Meghan Markle, she's actually insisted publicly. We've mentioned a lot of the race relation row in relation to slavery, historic slavery, and the monarchy's links to it. But actually, a more modern, contemporary allegation of racism came from Meghan Markle herself. Now, as you have commented on before, she's actually publicly said she's moved on from the race row that had, soured her relationship with the royal family. And that came after the Oprah interview, Angela, in which she said someone in the royal family had asked what colour her child would be. Now, has she moved on from this event like she moved on from acting? Because both things weren't working out for her very well.
Well, it's very interesting because Meghan uses that excuse, I've moved on, so she can't be criticised about things. But actually, she does say the word, she said the words slavery. And then she backtracks. And I've heard that so many different times that she's never involved. It's the press or it's somebody else, or people have misjudged her. But the fact that they got this award from the Kennedy Foundation against racism within the royal family, she should have given that back if she didn't really believe that. But that hasn't happened, and so there's obviously she hasn't moved on enough. I don't think she moves on. I mean, we've got so many examples of her looking back and complaining and moaning. And if she had moved on, then she would want to come to the coronation because she would have forgiven, or in her words, maybe accepted how the royal family is, and she'd start again, draw a line, and come. But she's absolutely determined not to do that. That's why she's not coming. She's got a lot of resentment there. So her type of moving on is, I don't think, many people's.
Yes, that idea of moving on, absolutely. I mean, what then do you think the king must feel? Because he's missing out on a relationship with two of his grandchildren.
Yes, I think that's very upsetting for any grandfather, and particularly upsetting for King Charles. He became quite fond of Meghan and he helped her, and they had talks about art and music and all those things, which he was delighted to do. And he thought that she would bring a breath of fresh air, but she obviously hasn't wanted to do that. And I think it's very sad for the children because Meghan doesn't talk to anyone except her mother, so they don't have a family really out in the United States. And here, what the point was of giving them royal titles when they have no idea what a royal is. They can't remember what any of them are like. We have to remember that will only be 4 on the day of the coronation, and little Lilibet is still 1. So they've got no knowledge about that, and I think that's very, very sad. And but actually, in families, that sometimes is like that.
Well, true, that's very true. But I mean, can you imagine a scenario, Angela, in which Meghan Markle is sat with the 2 children with the television on in Montecito watching the coronation?
I'm sure she will.
Yeah.
Of course. Of course she will. She'll watch it. She'll watch it too to see how Harry behaves and what she spots with the people if they don't do exactly what she thinks is right. She'll have it'll be a good critique that she will do. That's fair enough. I don't think she'll miss it at all. She wouldn't be able to. Too much
No.
curiosity.
Now, it's been reported as well recently that, and this is in relation to Prince Harry himself, that Harry has said he doesn't blame our late Queen for backing an alleged secret phone hacking deal between the royal family and Rupert Murdoch's, I believe it was the son. Then that was in the High Court, Angela. I mean, where is all of this coming from, and why can Harry not seem to know when to call things quits? Because there's a lot of hurt, right? There's a lot of hurt and anguish that he's caused over the last few years. Let's not forget that for the last 2 years, we still had the Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Philip, and of course the Queen herself. Now, why does he just keep dragging people through the mud like this, Angela?
Because I think that the less he's taken any notice of, the more he has to make some sort of noise so that people realise he's got power. I think he hungers for being respected and for power, but he doesn't do it in the right way. He wanted to leave, and I think there's obviously a certain amount of regret there, but the only way he can actually seem to come back is by doing these ridiculous things. And he's got, I think, about 3 court cases waiting to be heard. I mean, the curiosity is well, it was really odd when he came over to just to see if there was possibly going to be a case, and then he flew back. And he did that in a very curious way. Suddenly turned up. Nobody knew he was coming. He hadn't asked for all the protection. He had to bring his own. He's suing the Home Office for not providing enough protection, and that he's doing it himself. But then this time he's watched it via Zoom remotely. And I just think that he wants to make a huge fuss. He hates the British press, although he uses them when he wants to. But nobody's allowed to say anything negative, especially about Meghan. And that's, you can't control that either. And as time has gone on, the royal family have managed without him. They were sad at the beginning, and I think they're still sad now, but they have to get on with things. They've got on with their work. So he's missed less and less. He's not expected to be there. I think that it'll be very difficult for people to talk to him, the royals to talk to him, because they know he could go and sell it elsewhere, whatever he says. So it'll be restrained just for the weather, I think, if he's lucky. And I think that's why he's scarpering off straight after the ceremony, because, you know, he doesn't want to be humiliated by the royal family. But you can't expect people to like you if you've been so rude about them.
Absolutely not. I mean, do you think he'll be turning up with a Netflix camera?
Well, I don't. I wonder. He's had one before. The papers sort of rung round it so you could see it. I don't know if he'll dare or not, but he'll certainly have somebody sitting behind him or to the side of him who will carefully watch what he does and how he does it. The thing about Harry is that you can say how he's feeling by looking at his face.
Yeah.
His expressions are all there, whereas William keeps them carefully hidden.
Yeah, the difference between the two, William, sort of model of calm and composure
Dignity,
and
yeah.
dignity, yeah, and then Harry, very much the spare, an animated face and very transparent, I would argue.
Yes, he is actually. He's very delicate too. There's obviously something, wrong with him from time to time, and I think that it's very sad that he's turned out in this way. But I think it's very important that he lets go of his mother's death, because 25 years on and he's still thinks she's talking to him every day and telling him which way to go and what to do. I think it's very sad, and I don't think he will feel better until he can move forward. It's been very hard for William too, of course. He's had the same feeling, but he's tried very hard to turn that into good things, whereas Harry has gone into a negative way and is blaming everybody around him.
I mean, speaking of America, going back over to just discussing Montecito and where Harry and Meghan have set up their new life, how did you feel personally, Angela, about President Joe Biden turning down an invitation to the coronation? Because I know it's not the done thing for presidents in the US to come to coronations, but the last one was just after the war, so you can sort of understand why the president didn't attend then. But now, there's not really much of an excuse, is there?
Well, I think the excuse was that he's, an old man now, and he was going to go to Ireland, and actually having another long flight was going to be too much. The interesting thing is he is sending his wife instead, who is a very good friend of Harry's. Um, so it doesn't look as if it's a complete nasty way to behave. Um, Maybe it is too much for him, in which case he shouldn't stand again, should he?
No,
But
indeed.
maybe he just doesn't like the UK, and we can't do anything about that but wait for the next person to come along who does.
Do you think Harry and Meghan like the UK?
Meghan definitely doesn't, and she'd always described it as too small. And both of them talk using the word global. One country being powerful in that country is not enough. It's always got to be global. But I think Harry does actually have a feeling, but he won't let himself feel that, and that's one of the problems that he has to face. It's difficult for him, but he's bringing it on himself. He agreed to go. I don't think he feels comfortable where he is, and I think when you're brought up in that sort of way that he has, and you understand the importance of loyalty and duty, which he knew absolutely and felt very strongly. That's why he wanted to go to fight. They ended up in Afghanistan, and he said to me that he wanted to feel that was the first time he'd felt he'd done something really helpful, and he wanted to support his king, and he wants to support his father, and he wanted to support William when his time came. So he's got all those strands inside him, but he's gone. He
Yeah,
wanted freedom. He's got freedom, but all he does is moan about the past.
yeah. I mean, from the coronation, the Camilla, the Duchess of Cornwall, becomes, who is now Queen Consort, becomes just the Queen, right? Now,
Well, can
is
I
that not
explain?
true? Of course you can, of course
Well,
you can.
yeah, the queen consort, the word consort is a nothing word really. It just means that the queen who carries this, the queen consort, is married to the monarch. They won't then take over if the monarch dies. It goes to the next generation. And actually, Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, she was a consort, and before her, Queen Mary was consort. It's just a way of saying it, but it's expected that it's dropped off, really. It's just put down there so that nobody thinks they're going to take over. That's all it is. And it's been a sort of something that's been blown up to a ridiculous size when they felt that Charles wasn't obeying his mother because she said Queen Consort. But Her Majesty knew exactly that she wouldn't be called Queen Consort when she passed away and became Queen. So it's just a little explanation. And you're supposed to, as well as a consort, support the monarch. And that's quite right, because they are lonely. It's a huge burden. They can't trust many people. And they have this consort. Prince Philip was a consort as
Yes.
well. You just don't use it, but it's just there. You're there to support the monarch.
Now, do you think Camilla will make a good queen then? Do you think the country's ready to accept Queen Camilla?
I think most of the countries, I get lots of emails from people saying, I didn't like at the beginning, but my goodness, she's worked so hard, and Charles is a different person. And they have sort of mentioned my book, and that's why they've written to me,
Yeah.
because they agree, and they have liked her. There's a hardcore that's still pro Diana and that she should be queen, they say. But, she's not here, so she can't possibly be queen. But I think that she's a sort of woman that the more you get to know her, the better you like her. And she's very hardworking. She's very good with the king. She knows him absolutely very well, and she can make him laugh. She can calm him down. Do you remember then, after the Queen's death, he threw a pen across the
Yeah.
room because he was
Yeah.
furious because it didn't work. And she immediately came out with one in her handbag and gave it to him, and he calmed down. You see, so she knows what might happen and she anticipates it. And it was very funny because much later, when I was going to an engagement with them, they had to sit down and obviously something was going to be signed. And she actually just looked at me, or at least I think she looked at me, and she winked, and out came her pen before he started signing. And he looked at her and laughed. So, she knows him very well. But she's also done a tremendous amount of hard work for charities in the literacy, which is her key one of her key charities, that if people learn how to read, they stand to have a much better future,
Well,
whatever
absolutely.
their background. And then to get away with, to stop domestic violence, which she did a tremendous amount during the pandemic, and which is very important. And it's one of these things that members of the royal family have tiptoed round, but she's all in. If she wants to do something, she doesn't mind. She's not embarrassed by the language or what she might hear, or people crying or anything like that. And she's been very helpful. She doesn't just cut a ribbon. She makes suggestions, she works hard, and she keeps up. She's done lots and lots of visits since she's been queen, where she's done literacy. She's carried it through because it's so important. And whereas when she's with King Charles, she will walk a footstep behind him, that's not to make her think that she's inferior. It's just that this is his gig, as it were,
Yes.
and she will stay back. But when she's on her own, she's very powerful and very determined, and that's very helpful to the country.
Yeah, a friend of mine, and he's older than me, obviously, but once before, the Queen Camilla was Queen Camilla, he was on a flight with her, and honestly, he said he had the most phenomenal time because she's such a good laugh. She's a very gregarious, funny person, actually,
Yes, she's very
in
funny.
private. Now,
And it's all self-deprecating. It's
yes.
all, yeah.
Yes, it's not grandeur and sort of, all
No.
of that with her. And Angela, people can get hold of your book, which I believe off the top of my head is called Camilla, Duchess of Cornwall, From Outcast to Future Queen Consort. And that's in all
Yes,
good bookshops.
that is true. Thank you very much.
Now, Angela, finally then, I wonder, do you think we're going to look back on this coronation, as I say, happening next week? We're going to look back on this coronation in years to come with the same regard that people looked back on Her Majesty the Queen's coronation, and we'll look back with fondness, and perhaps right now we just don't realise the gravity of what we're about to experience.
Yes, I think it will satisfy a great many people. All this stuff that's going on beforehand, I think people, when they see it for themselves, will relax and feel enormously pleased that he's taken the reins of the country and the Commonwealth. I mean, I remember when I was talking about what was going on in the Platinum Jubilee, that I was walking through loads of people. A policeman was guiding me because it was so crowded I couldn't get through. And I talked to a few of them, well, quite a lot on the way. And they were saying, this is just fantastic. I'm so happy they're doing this. It's the first time I've been out. We're gathering together. Well, there's all sorts of people. We're all being friendly. And I'm sure that will happen again. I mean, it won't have exactly the same effect of coming out after the pandemic, but it will be that people will warm together. You've got something in common with in every turn, everybody there, apart from the people who deliberately want to be negative, and they will love it. I mean, I think all the military who are out and going to show us sort of amazing things will be wonderful. And I think the concert will be wonderful. And I think seeing him on the balcony will be amazing. There he is. He's devoted his life to this country, and at last he's been made king. And we'll sing, God Save the King.
Absolutely, and God save the King. Angela Levin, thank you very much for your time today.
Pleasure.
Have you got what it takes to be a reasoned presenter? Well, send us a short clip of yourself to join@reasoned.uk and we might be seeing you on this very channel very soon indeed.